Hello, everybody. Today we will be taking notes on interpreting remainders with division. When dividing, we know that sometimes you might end up with something left over, and that's called our remainder. At times, we must interpret or figure out what we have to do with the remainder. When interpreting remainders, there are three different options. First, you can ignore the remainder. That means that the remainder is not necessary or needed. It's not a part of the answer that we actually need. They want to focus on how many complete groups there are. Next, you can round the remainder and add that into the quotient, adding one more. There needs to be one more added. Think of times when there cannot be someone left out or something left out. Everything must be included in the group. Lastly, you have using the remainder as the answer. In this situation, a question might ask, what's left over or left out? Or something's partially filled. In our examples, we have Corey is making goodie bags for his birthday party. He has 90 pieces of candy that will split into 7 bags. How many pieces of candy will each person receive in their bag? Looking at our three options, ignoring it, rounding it, and using the remainder as our answer, we go back to our question. They want to know how many pieces of candy will each person receive in the bag. Well, in this case, the candy is being split equally amongst 7 bags. So I want to know just about what's being split evenly. I'm not factoring in the remainder, and I'm not including anything that's left out. In this case, I'm going to ignore that remainder and just focus on what's being evenly split, the complete groups. The reason being, the candy is equally placed into each bag. Each person is going to get the same amount. Next, 330 students go to the ECU football game. Each row can hold 23 students. The question asks, what is the fewest number of rows needed to fit all the students? Well, it's important that it says the fewest number of rows needed to fit all of the students. That lets us know that no one can be left out. Therefore, we can't ignore that there is a remainder, and we must include everyone. Whatever our quotient is, or already set complete groups, we're going to have to add one more to it so that everybody's included. The reason says everyone will have a seat. No one can be left out. Everyone will be included. The next example states that 450 students from EVA are going on a trip. If each bus holds 40 students, how many buses do they need for the trip? Well, think of it this way. If 450 students need to go and you don't have enough buses, then everybody can't go. So we can't ignore the fact that there might be some people left over. Is the remainder important? Absolutely. However, they're not asking about what's left over. They want to know how many trips or how many buses they need. And if we want to include everyone on the trip, we're going to have to add one more so that everybody can go. This might mean that we add another bus, and that's okay, even if it's not full. The next one says a librarian has 38 new books to put on shelves. She can fit 8 books on each shelf. How many shelves will she need for all of the books? With 38 books, it's going to be split 8 books per shelf. He doesn't want to leave any books out or unshelved, so he can't just ignore the fact that there may be some remainders. We can't use the remainder as our answer because they're not asking about the leftover. They want to know how many bookshelves she's going to need in order to fit all. That leaves us with rounding it or adding one more. All of the books must be on the shelf, even if the shelf is not full. You'll need one extra for any leftover books there might be. The next example says there are 25 people waiting for a shuttle. If 9 people can fit on one shuttle, how many people will be on the last trip to the shuttle? When they ask for the remainder, it tends to be the easier one to point out based on some of the keywords, such as when they ask how many people will be on the last trip. This lets us know that they're looking at the remaining amount. We're going to use the remainder as our answer. How many people are still waiting? How many are going to be on the shuttle on the last trip after the equal groups have already gone? Next, Miss Overby has 38 slides of specimens to observe under the microscope. How many slides will each of her 5 groups get if they are split evenly? Given that each group gets the same amount, no one group gets more, no one group gets less. I want to know how many will each group get. Even if there are some left over, we can't just add those into a random group because then it would be unfair. Therefore, we're not looking for the amount that's left over. We're not going to add one more. We're going to ignore that remainder because if I put any of the leftovers in a group, then that means there will be an imbalance. Every group's going to get the same amount. We want to know what is the amount each group is going to get without the leftovers. Next up, Louis is giving Skittles to his 3 friends. He has 23 Skittles to split equally. How many Skittles will be left over if Louis gives each friend an equal amount? Well, our question explicitly asks, what is the leftover amount after he gives an equal amount to each friend? Our leftover amount is our remainder. How many Skittles are left that is not shared equally? And lastly, Mrs. Webb was in a book club. Her and 3 other people were reading a book that had 106 pages. If they split the number of pages evenly amongst each other, how many pages would each person read? Although it says the pages are split equally, that doesn't mean that there might not be any left over. So we have to take into account that the groups are even. That's what they want to know. How many pages is each person going to read? In this case, we'll simply ignore the remainder because each person reads the same amount. And our question asks, how many pages did each person read?